As Zelensky said last night, that it all comes down to Putin, and he can give the order to stop the war, in their view, whenever he wants. And so there are some parallel realities going on, but that's kind of maybe the nature of any peace and negotiation, because obviously they're so far apart in their views. But yeah, I think that there are some positive moments, but also for the average Ukrainian, this is still feels very, very far away. And also, so the Russians have said that as well today. And they seem to be talking about different things. Like the US are talking about a Black Sea ceasefire, and so are the Ukrainians. The Russians are just talking about helping to open up some trade routes. It's a different reality.
Negotiations have resumed in Saudi Arabia between Russia and the United States, aimed at bringing about a possible peace deal in Ukraine. This follows separate talks over the weekend between Ukraine and the US, which were described as productive. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, has dismissed Keir Starmer's plan for an international peacekeeping force.
I think it's a combination of a posture and a pose, and a combination of also being simplistic. I think there's this, this sort of notion of we've all got to be like Winston Churchill. The Russians are going to march across Europe. I think that's preposterous.
That was Steve Witkoff discussing the British plan for troops being sent to Ukraine as part of a peace deal. Well, joining me now is Jack Clover, Assistant Foreign News Editor for The Times. Hello, Jack.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us. Who is at these talks, and how much do we know about what they're actually discussing?
So this is the B team. If last month when they were there for the big photo call, and we had Rubio and we had Lavrov. At the moment, we've got sort of lower-ranking US and Russian officials, still major players like Andrew Peake and Karazin on the Russian side. These are kind of career diplomats and security advisors. But this is sort of less of the fanfare that we had earlier on. What they're attempting to speak about, the focus seems to have moved on to the Black Sea, but at the same time there seems to be a bit of a confusion about what has already been agreed, because last week there was this agreement about the cessation of strikes on energy infrastructure, and Putin himself said that he'd sort of turned missiles back in midair, but this hasn't happened. But yet Witkoff and Volz over the weekend have spoken to American press, giving off the impression that they believe it has happened.
Right.
And so they think they're moving on to a second stage of the discussions about the sea when they've done the air already. But the Ukrainians are living in a slightly different reality when they think, well, actually, you haven't sorted out the air yet because our civilians still dying almost every night. So it's a slightly bizarre sort of parallel worlds going on over there. But it's interesting.
I mean, the fact that you've got, as you say, the B team there of career diplomats and people like that, could one almost see that as that's kind of heartening, because that means that away from the big announcements by people who didn't exist 6 months ago who go on a lot of podcasts, these are people who know what they're doing. They'll be putting together the framework for something that can actually work, perhaps, or is that too optimistic?
I think that's one way of looking at it, definitely. I think that even the Ukrainians are optimistic. They believe that in a way they have a lot to lose. Obviously, they've got more to lose than everyone else. But at the same time, if what happens is you get the Russians agreeing to something technical, which then they break, then either they've got themselves a ceasefire if they don't break it, or they've proven to the Americans that they're not acting in good faith. And so the Ukrainians have quite a lot to gain as well. Also, they haven't brought their B team. I mean, they don't have Yermak, which is Zelensky's top advisor. They don't have Zelensky himself, but they do have Rustem Umerov, who was there last night. He's already been speaking to American officials. He's obviously their defense minister. He's a major player in the technicalities of how they defend their country, and how this sort of 600-mile front line is managed. And so they are taking this very seriously, even though in some ways they could not, because they know that none of this, in their view, and as Zelensky said last night, that it all comes down to Putin, and he can give the order to stop the war, in their view, whenever he wants. And so there are some parallel realities going on, but that's kind of maybe the nature of any peace and negotiation, because obviously they're so far apart in their views. But yeah, I think that there are some positive moments, but also for the average Ukrainian, this is still feels very, very far away. And also, so the Russians have said that as well today. And they seem to be talking about different things. Like the US are talking about a Black Sea ceasefire, and so are the Ukrainians. The Russians are just talking about helping to open up some trade routes. It's a different reality.
It's a different reality. Well, I mean, speaking of different realities, those comments by Steve Witkoff are completely dismissing the idea of a Russian advance across Europe. I guess if you're talking about whether the Russians are going to be sort of turning up in Paris in their tanks, then you can see where he's coming from. If you're in Estonia, even if you're in Poland, that all sounds pretty insensitive, doesn't it?
Yes, it's very insensitive. I mean, I think, to an extent, what Witkoff, if he's talking about practicalities, Russia would have trouble marching across Europe, because Ukraine has done a pretty good job of stopping them where they are. But in terms of their ambitions, I think Russia's made it quite clear that they do want to rehabilitate some of the territorial advantages of the Soviet Union. They do not kind of see the legitimacy of some of the post-Soviet states which have large Russian-speaking minorities in them. And I think it's naive to think that they wouldn't want to start another war in a few years' time. But whether or not But Witkoff's remarks about the British proposals about there's 10,000 troops on the ground there, and about that being simplistic, in a way, there is arguments that the Ukrainians agree that is simplistic as well. They agree that it's an unrealistic proposal, and that I spoke to a former Ukrainian defence minister saying that this is dated. This is a kind of 20th century attitude to how you solve a conflict, and that we need something. Ukraine's got an army almost 1 million strong. 10,000 people turning up is a symbolic gesture, and much appreciated, but it's also a bit dated. If
you're going to have a symbolic gesture, you might as well have a better symbolic gesture, or a different symbolic gesture, or a less inflammatory symbolic gesture,
or just thinking out a technical way where they can implement an aerial ceasefire and give things which Ukraine doesn't have, which is to do with intelligence and superior air defense and things like that. So it's helping the Ukrainians with things that they don't have, as opposed to giving them a fraction of things that they already have, which would be troops on the ground. So there were varying views on this.
Look, finally, what will we see in the next couple of days, the next week, that shows us whether this is worth anything at all this?
Well, it's hard to see, but I'm sure we'll get some form of readouts at the end of today, and I imagine that the language will be about the Black Sea. This seems to be what the Americans want to be talking about. And then it'll be the same as last week, where we have both sides saying something, we put it to the... and then it gets put into practice, and you have another week of the war, and you see whether or not they have been agreeing to any kind of cessation of hostilities on the Black Sea. I mean, the port of Odessa is hit almost every night, including foreign flag ships being hit. So if that then continues, and then the Americans don't acknowledge that it's continuing, and then the whole nature of these peace talks will be slightly confused, but at the moment there is lots of hope, but there's also a lot of murky realities, because everyone is talking about slightly different things all the time, and having slightly different kind of information sources. So sure. It's hard to figure it out.
Thank you very much indeed, Jack Clover. Jack Clover is the Assistant Foreign News Editor for The Times. Good to have you.